In this episode of Defining Diabetes, Jenny Smith and I are going to define A1c. Defining Diabetes is made possible by Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise, and to always consult a physician before becoming bold with insulin or making any changes to your medical plan. A1c, Jenny, we're going to define A1c because some people like to say it out all fancy, right? How do they say it? Those people who like to give the extra letters, the B, D, C, G, G afterwards or whatever. What's the whole thing?
Hemoglobin A1c is essentially the full term for it, right? Hemoglobin A1c. Typically, it's tested anywhere between 2 to 4 times a year by most endos or primary care doctors. It essentially shows how well blood sugars have been controlled over about a 3-month time period, mainly because it refers to the life cycle of your red blood cells, and that's the hemoglobin part of A1c. The life cycle of a red blood cell is such that you have turnover about every 90 days. So about every 3 months, you've got this turnover of red blood cells. And with hemoglobin being a piece of it and the glucose sticking to the hemoglobin, then we can measure overall the amount of sugar that was circulating within that 3-month time period. Now, one other piece to A1c is knowing that the month closer to the draw for A1c has more weight into the A1c value than the 3-month ago month. Does that make sense?
No. Say it again.
Because the rate of the blood cell turnover, you are going to have more impact and more of those new blood cells within the past 30 days than the ones from 3 months ago. So many people say, well, I had an A1c done, 3 months ago, but in the past 3 or 4 weeks, I was in Italy on vacation eating all the pizzas in the whole entire country. I had a honeymoon or I had whatever. And man, my blood sugars were like all over the place. Well, it's probably not as indicative of an A1c then as it may have been over the course of a 3 month because this past month has been crazy, right?
Okay,
so,
I see.
Does that make sense?
It does now because I paid more attention. It's not that you didn't explain it well the first time. It got a little too technical for my little head. But, and back in the day, right, far enough ago, this was the only real measurement we had of people's, quote unquote, success with their diabetes, right? Your A1c was, your doctor looked at your A1c and said, this is your average blood sugar for the last 30 days or for 90 days.
Right.
And that was it.
Right.
There is so much conversation around A1c. Some people feel like it's a test that they pass or fail. Some people are scared to go get it because they don't want to hear. You're going to hear annoying people like me tell you that I don't really worry about it anymore because I have an expectation of where it's going to be and it mostly goes where I expect it to be. It's not even something I think about anymore to a great extent. But there's more that goes to it. So as you're listening to this definitions, you're going to hear one about time and range and variability and things like that, and try to think of those all together. Defining Diabetes on the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by Dexcom, Omnipod, and Dancing for Diabetes. There are links in the show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com to all the wonderful sponsors. But if you want to find out more about getting a free, no-obligation demo of the Omnipod, you can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. To get started on the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, dexcom.com/juicebox. And to learn about the good that's being done at Dancing for Diabetes, go to dancing4diabetes.com. Thanks for checking out Defining Diabetes. Come back every Friday as Jenny and I break down a new word or phrase that is impacting your life with type 1 diabetes. And since you're still here, I don't really say this very often, but you could follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I merged together my blog and podcast pages on Facebook. I'm now at Bold with Insulin on Facebook. And Instagram, they won't let me merge them together. I would. The biggest, most active account is at Juicebox Podcast, but They're still at Arden's Day, and I started at Bold with Insulin, hoping that one day I'd be able to blend them all together. For now, though, I believe at Juicebox Podcast is the way to go on Instagram. Juicebox Podcast is on Twitter, and, it's pretty much everywhere. But I really find Instagram and Facebook to be the most active. By the way, those of you who are asking for t-shirts, you got to me. I'm working on it. Hold tight.